All right, I think we should be live now. So welcome everybody to the third session of our Global Groove Electronic Music Journalism Workshop program hosted by Groove Magazine in collaboration with Goethe-Institut, taking place every workday from Monday to Friday from 1 p.m. CEST to 3 p.m. CEST until next Friday. We will monitor the YouTube live chat, so if you have any questions for the workshop hosts or the 10 selected participants, we will try to ask them on your behalf. Whoops. And us, that's my colleague Laura and I. Laura is a little bit impaired, so to speak, because she is in a cafe, so it's loud and noisy and very crowded in there. So I think I will probably be moderating most of this. And yeah, today's guest is Max Fritz, or Maximilian Fritz, to give you the full name, who joins us with a workshop titled Identifying Topics, News, Features, Interviews, and Commentary. That is pretty self-explanatory, I guess, but a few words about Max in advance. Max joined Groove in the summer of 2018 and had the most unfortunate timing because in his first week, I think he was informed by our editor-in-chief that the print magazine, which Groove up until that point was, would be discontinued, and that the future of the magazine itself was very uncertain. He stayed on board, however, for the transformation into a fully digital publication and joined later on as a trainee, and now is an editor together with Alexis Walz, who currently work with a reduced team, including some interns on Groove. And today Max will talk about news. And will hopefully answer questions like what is considered to be relevant, why something is deemed newsworthy, and who actually gets to decide that. So yeah, Max, if you would like to start, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you so much, Christopher, for this nice introduction. I guess there's not much to add here. It's really nice to meet all of you and really nice to do this workshop all together with you. Thank you so much for applying, and as far as I know, I'm going to work with some of you during the next months because I'll take care of some of the features you're going to write. I'm glad to work with you, and I'm here to speak about how to identify topics, how to write news, features, interviews, and commentary, as Christopher just said. My lecture is basically structured in 4 parts. The first one is rather short, since you guys are pretty advanced writers, as I could see in your bios. I don't have to define what news, features, and interviews and commentaries are extensively, I guess. So this would be the first part, a little small introduction, a definition of these 4 types of texts. Then the first part is basically about how to research, how to find topics that are worth publishing or worth writing about. The second part would be about, it's a rather short one, but it's a nonetheless important one. It is about what makes a good topic. And the third part brings together the type of text you want to write and the kind of topic you did your research on. So we're going to, like in part 3, we're going to bring both parts together, I guess. To start out, I'm going to hand out some brief definitions of news to start with. News, I guess, are, from a writing perspective, probably the easiest pieces to write. They usually just take a couple of paragraphs and are pieces that refer to events that happened 1 or 2 days ago, or maybe a couple of hours ago, but they should be written as fast as possible, since, well, I guess it's self-explanatory. It's not news otherwise. Features, on the other hand, they are the ones that I guess require some kind of proper writing. They require creativity. They are the ones that have to do with artists or whatsoever. And features are the types of texts where you, as an author, are able to bring in your opinion or your stance on some topics whatsoever. Interviews, on the other hand, like would be classical or classic Q&As, where you prepare a couple of questions and transcribe the result afterwards, but not transcribe it as at university, where you basically transcribe every sigh or every pause your interviewee makes, but transcribe it in a readable and well, fluent manner, I guess. And the last one would be commentaries, which are rather short pieces as well, because they have to be on points. They reflect your opinion, and I guess they are the hardest ones to perform because they should not be too emotional nor too objective. You have to balance it out somehow. And in my opinion, comments work as an extension of news somehow, because comments always refer to a certain event that's happening or that has happened over the last few days. So this is an introduction. Going to part one now, or begin with part one. With research, I have to make a little disclaimer in the beginning. Everything I'm telling you today is basically told from the view of Groove Magazine, what we think is important to publish or to write on. This may vary from magazine to magazine. You won't find two magazines that have the completely same philosophy or ethos on identifying topics or on which topics are worth reporting on. And of course, Groove Magazine, although we don't want to always, but we of course represent a certain westernized view of electronic music, I guess. So our core market is not global as it would be RAs, for example, but our core market is European, or Europe, the UK, the US, whatsoever, and especially, of course, the German-speaking countries. So, which topics fit Groove Magazine? Or which topics are best for Groove Magazine? Of course, it should be well-researched and balanced out content that is critical, profound, and reliable. This is a pretty basic notion, I guess, but it is super important for us to report on stuff that actually happened, to report the truth, not to report lies, or not to well, get distracted whatsoever. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but it's basically super important for us to check on our news and what we are reporting on. And I wanted to read up my thesis for this lecture as well. So the thesis would be that every topic's relevant if it contributes to the discourse. You may have checked now that I guess every topic can contribute to a discourse, but I hope to clarify within this lecture which discourse I'm referring to and which discourse we want to contribute to and represent. Content-wise, Groove Magazine has different sections. I'd say to start out with news or announcements related to music production or gear or whatsoever are really interesting, because you always have to bear in mind that lots of your readers, when you're at an electronic music outlet, are into producing as well. It doesn't matter if they are amateur producers or advanced producers, maybe even established DJs whatsoever. But stuff like this makes great news. Like recently it was the 808 day, like the day where, well, gear freaks or the electronic music scene, or the music scene overall, worships the invention of the 808s, of the Roland 808. And for this day, the Analog Mafia, which is a collective of former Roland engineers, published a drum synthesizer, 808 drum synthesizer that was downloadable for free, accessible for free. So stuff like this makes great news. Or another example would be the passing of Mike Huckabee a couple of months ago. The Chicago House legend, the Chicago House innovator. We discovered that we had a quite good talk with Mike Huckabee, I guess in 2013, and he handed us over a sample pack to give to our readers, and well, we then made it accessible for them in 2020 to I don't know, to have some souvenir, to have something to remember of Mike Huckabee. So stuff like that is quite important to report on or to publish. Then our main focus is, of course, as our name says, a magazine for club culture. Is basically everything related to club culture in its broadest definition. So good examples would be openings and closings of certain venues, stuff that happens in politics, especially in Berlin. So there's this ongoing discussion whether or not clubs should be treated as cultural institutions, which would mean a big tax relief for them. And well, the Senate is currently debating about this, and for us, this is crucial. Stuff like this is crucial. People are really, really interested in news or pieces on topics like those. So this is stuff that's worth reporting on, of course. Or most recently, or not so recently, basically since March, the effects of coronavirus on club culture, not only in Germany, but worldwide. So if any club starts a crowdfunding campaign, if some clubs have to shut down, if maybe the Senate in Berlin or the German government allows clubs to reopen again, stuff like this makes great news. Those are usually the news that work best. As I said before, you have to be quick when you're trying to report on this. You basically, or you maybe, or probably just got that I was talking or referring a lot to Berlin during my lecture already. This is on the one hand because we're based in Berlin, and well, clubbing wise and music wise, it's probably the most important city in the German speaking in the German speaking countries. But Berlin is important, but of course not the only place with clubs. So in all Germany, in Austria, in Switzerland, there's so many other great clubs. Like maybe, I don't know, in Vienna, in Munich, in Frankfurt, as Heiko and Thilo spoke about yesterday. So Frankfurt was the former center of club culture in Germany, and we're trying to shift away our focus from Berlin, and we're desperate, or we are often trying to represent other scenes that are worth reporting on. Like, I don't know, if you take Eastern Germany, like they have such a vibrant scene, not only in Leipzig, but as well in the smaller cities over there. So Berlin is important, but not the epitome or the epicenter of clubbing culture. This is important for us to stress out. Another great source for content, of course, is the internet and social media, which is quite self-explaining, I guess. But especially on social media, there's so many debates going on, not only in bubbles like techno Twitter or whatso, or stuff like that, but there's really good debates going on about Black Lives Matter connected to clubbing culture, about racism that's happening in clubbing culture. So it's always worth to have a look which debates are happening there. How to channel these debates in a proper way. I'm going to speak about this in a bit. Another great content, of course, is also self-explanatory, but sort of self-explaining is, of course, just playing music. So if any known producer announces a big album or a new album or something quite unusual for him or her, this is, of course, stuff we have to announce as well. So especially Berlin producers or German producers that are worshipped by a readership come to my mind here. Like, I don't know, if an alien announces a new album, if the people from, like, if an artist from Oscultune, the label of Berghain, announces a new album, this is absolutely worth reporting on. And well, other great content, of course, are historical and cultural pieces on iconic tracks, for example, or on musical developments, on musical periods, on certain scenes. So more in-depth features. Well, you always have to bear in mind that people in electronic music just love nostalgia. So if you have anything to ride on that's happened, I don't know, a couple of decades ago, people will adore this kind of topic. And yeah, this is basically the content we wanna see on our homepage. What we don't want to see, on the other hand, would be just plain gossip, for example. I already talked about social media. So pretty much every day, or pretty much every couple of weeks, DJs would get in fights with each other. And I don't know, accuse each other of not representing the scene in an adequate way whatsoever. And this is nothing we want to take part in, at least not report on it without any commentary or without any explaining. So gossiping is not a thing, as well as clickbaiting by, I don't know, outrageous headlines or headlines that could easily be misunderstood, or reporting everything that Berghain does, which makes great news in Germany, of course, because everywhere, like, if there's Berghain on, people always will click. But we're trying to not do this extensively. And I guess the most important thing for us not to do is to capitalize on certain uproars or fights in social media. A good example would be the cornrow gate that happened a couple of months ago, where Nina Kravitz, the famous Russian DJ, I guess she should be known to everyone. You should be familiar with her somehow. Made or had some cornrows, and yeah, was accused of cultural appropriation afterwards. So this would not be a classic news piece for us to publish. What we did then was, Laura wrote a really good comment on this 1 or 2 days later, when Laura was back then an editorial writer. So we're always trying to, I don't know, explain and well, give in-depth contents when it comes to, I don't know, political discussions on social media or something like this. And when publishing content, you always have to bear in mind that it's important to protect artists from themselves, because so many people basically say some stuff they didn't think about enough, they didn't think on well enough. Of course, there's people as well that just talk other shit, but there's artists as well that need to be protected. So if so, there's no good in reporting on anything, on any controversial statement that an artist did. The best solution would be to get in touch with them and to ask them what they meant by it. Yeah. So I hope I could introduce you to what we like to represent content-wise and what we like to publish content-wise. It's important for us to be constructive, I guess. If possible, our topics should be in-depth features that benefit the reader, but maybe in the best case, even the scene. And this is what I mean by discourse as well. We're aiming, of course, it's not possible for every topic, but with our topics, we're aiming to nurture a certain discourse. And this is the discourse I was referring to with my introduction thesis. So yeah, the next part would be now where to look for topics and how to validate your information, the information you received. For me, there are 3 types of sources. The first step would be the official ones, like media or some verified artists' accounts on social media. Because, well, if an artist posts something, they are, at least about themselves, they are pretty sure or pretty certain. That's the truth. That's the truth. So no matter what, like, you still always have to double check official sources, even if the news piece comes from RA or something. Like, I'd say if RA publishes something, it is right to, I don't know, 99%, but even they make mistakes sometimes. So be always sure to check on several sources. The second part of sources would be inside information. You always have to keep in mind that electronic music is, or often happens to be, quite informal. As professionalized it may seem throughout the last years, you should not forget that you get a lot of inside information. The questions you have to ask yourself then is, on the one hand, can I really write on this? So if the inside information is, I don't know, really, or could be really harmful for certain artists, this is where ethics come in, and I'd rather recommend not to write on them. Then, as I just said, you have to protect artists from themselves, and this is quite important to me. And the second question you have to ask yourself, is this inside information you got even true? Because there is people that are telling you lies, of course. I don't know why, because maybe they want to benefit, maybe they want to harm certain artists. So always double check, especially when it comes to inside information. And the third kind of source would be pitches by agencies, outlets, or bookers, which are, or any kind of people involved in the scene, but in a, I don't know, professionally, in a professional way, and involved in the scene. Those are not official sources for me, because usually those people get paid for what they're pitching you, and you have to ask yourself really strictly if you really want to write on this, if it's worth writing on, because people that can, or people that are paid to picture something, are usually paid by big artists, because the other ones obviously can't afford that. So you have to ask yourselves if you really want to advantage big artists to some extent. So yeah, this would be the first part of my lecture: how to do your research and what we worship as content as Groove Magazine. The second one now would be what makes a good topic. Those are only, like, I only came up with a few factors. There's so many other ones, I guess, but those 3 are the most important to me. Like I said in the beginning, I'm talking from my perspective, and this may vary from journalist to journalist. The first one would be topicality, of course, especially when it comes to news and commentaries. The both of them are somehow intertwined, in my opinion. So always make sure that if you get interesting news, don't rush with writing on them, but make sure if it's something striking to be able to play it out or to publish it within 1 or 2 days maximum, I'd say. This, of course, is not the case for in-depth pieces or longer features. The second factor would be versatility. In my opinion, topics are most valuable if they contribute to a discourse I mentioned before. And the best thing you possibly can achieve when writing on topics is that they have some kind of longevity. So if you happen to figure out that there's I don't know, an interesting music genre or musical development going on right now, like, I don't know, the breakbeat revival that's going on since, I don't know, 5 or 6 years from now, and you decide to write on that, the best thing you can achieve is that people will still kind of read these features and read on them, or read them in like 1 or 2 decades from now. So this is what I mean by versatility. And good topics also are based on regularity. Bear in mind, as I told you before, that electronic music feeds off its past a lot. So I don't know, this futuristic approach that electronic music once had, or some say still has turned in quite the opposite, in my opinion, because readers and DJs and journalists as well, of course, are so nostalgic. Basically everyone loves to be reminded of the good old days, even though they weren't as good as some people say, I guess. But I'm not the one to judge with 26 years, but yeah, whatsoever. But lots of readers, I don't know, they love anniversaries, they love jubilees, they love certain dates. A good example would again be the 808 day, because the famous Roland drum machine turned 40 this year. So it's always worth posting, I don't know, the piece on the 808, reposts whatsoever, because yeah, people are really nostalgic. Or another example would be Ricardo Villalobos turned 50, I guess on the 5th of August. I'm not quite sure now, but I don't think that's a shame. And well, I think you all know Ricardo Villalobos. Heiko told you a bit about him yesterday. And what we did then, we made a feature accessible that was published in Groove Magazine in 2012 and posted it for free for readers, and they really, really enjoyed that. So this is the kind of stuff that makes good topics, I guess. Always bear in mind that, well, or if you write about acid house in the UK, those are the periods that were formative for rave culture as we know it. So it's always worth going back to the past, I guess. And the third and last part of my lecture would be about which type of text is best for your topic. You have to keep in mind that a lot of electronic music is, or a lot of electronic music press as well, is absolutely artist-based. I guess this star cult that's began in the 90s already, especially in Berlin or in Germany, with I don't know, people that played the Love Parade of a famous German rave, which I'm going to tell you a bit about later on. This star cult is really existent nowadays as well. So keep in mind that your features to some extent have to be or should be artist-based. There's two kinds of ways, or two kinds of text type how to best feature artists. The one would be interviews, the other ones would be features, of course. They help you to introduce newer acts, I guess, because you paint vivid pictures of their personalities. You are able to bring in your own thoughts. You're able to introduce newcomers that, well, except from some really some heads, I guess, won't know. So you have to bring in your own thoughts. You have to write a consistent text. You have to, like, it's your responsibility to paint pictures of those artists that are new to the scene. Q&As, on the other hand, they of course work best for already established artists that don't need to be introduced extensively. At Groove Magazine, we have this, I guess, pretty good example of Zeitgeschichten, which is basically interviews with some legends of electronic music about their careers. Really, really long Q&As, really in-depth Q&As about people that don't need, or that need no introduction. Like, I don't know, there's Zeitgeschichten features about Frankie Knuckles, about 808 State, I don't know, about John Hessel, the famous fourth world innovator. So people like this. Q&As work best for people that are already established, I guess. Or Q&As also work best if there's some really, really striking news that has happened. I guess it was in the beginning of 2020, but I'm not so sure right now. I already talked about the Love Parade, but in the beginning of 2020, Dr. Motte, who is a German DJ and the so-called father of the Love Parade, wanted to revive this mega rave. And I have to give you the context that the Love Parade used to be a mega rave with millions of people, first happening in Berlin in the 90s, or about 2000, if I'm not mistaken, and then happened in different locations in Western Germany, and came to a tragic end in 2010, when the whole rave ended in a catastrophe, where some people died as well. So when we learned about the news that Dr. Motte is planning to revive it, we immediately decided to interview him. And I guess I interviewed him 1 or 2 days later, and we had a really good Q&A, I guess. And this was something our readers really, really enjoyed. So Q&As work with established artists, or as an, I guess, as well as an extension to news, if the news give a good enough reason to do interviews, I guess. And now, as the last type of text I'm going to introduce you are commentaries, or commentary. As I stressed out before, they express your opinion. So first of all, you have to be aware that some people absolutely might not like what you wrote, and you have to go through this. And again, be aware that you work in the field of electronic music, where things tend to heat up pretty quickly. I guess sometimes, I guess they only heat up quicker in hip hop or something. I don't know. But especially in electronic music, as I don't know, as open-minded as it seems, people get butthurt really, really quick. People get angry really, really quick. And a good example would be, I guess I handed it out to you in advance, this demo that happened in support of club culture in Berlin, which made the news. I guess there were even articles in New York Times. There were articles in outlets all around the world. There was this demo happening during the pandemic in order to save club culture, but it was a demo where people floated across the Spree, which is the river going through Berlin, on inflatable boats, got drunk and high, all for the sake of club culture, of course, and ignored corona restrictions, ignored social distancing, were blasting loud music several 100 meters away. There was happening a Black Lives Matter demo, which is, I guess, a cause you could do a demo even during a pandemic, but well, they actually think I kind of ignored this Black Lives Matter demo in an arrogant way, and to make things worse, they even finished the demo in front of an hospital where sick people suffering from corona were in, and I don't know, they were rushing into the hospital to go in the toilets and stuff like that. And when we learned of this news, it was happening in the beginning of June, I guess. We immediately agreed on writing a comment. That's what I did then, and it worked really, really well. But this is what I meant by you should be aware that people might not like what you wrote, because the people that protested there, of course, were really, really pissed off, and the collectives that protested there. So I got a couple of messages on my private Facebook account. They mailed me on my work email account and so on. So you have to keep that in mind when writing a commentary. So if there's any topic that I don't know, emotionalizes you, that you think it's worth commenting on, that moves you, for which reason that might be, you should absolutely try to write a comment on it, because commentaries are, I think, the types of text that get the biggest resonance. Yeah. And last but not least, you should try to develop creative features as well on your own. You're not limited to any of the already established norms. So with Groove, we, for example, have this track-by-track feature where we are writing about formative tracks that have been published, I don't know, some decades ago, or maybe even a couple of years ago, and try to do interviews with the artists that produce them. Those are the kinds of features that work really well. You don't have to stick to some norms or to rely on functional topics, I guess. So it's really important for you to come up with creative features on your own. And what I really have to remind you, last but not least, is that it's really important not to rush on your topics. Check them several times before pitching or publishing them, especially when working at an outlet. So as you have heard, there's only Alexis and me now, but it's still quite important that both of us read the texts we are going to publish, because there's nothing worse than having a great topic, having this topic, I don't know, having it in a format that you enjoy, having a great text, but publishing or pitching it then, and it's full of mistakes and easily preventable mistakes. So please be always aware before pitching or publishing to go through your stuff once more. And pitching is a good buzzword, I guess, because as I'm informed, tomorrow there's going to be a lecture about how to get your pitch how to get your pitch published in certain electronic music outlets. I'm noticing now that I rushed through my lecture a bit. It took only 35 minutes, so I warned you from rushing and did the same by myself. I'm quite sorry for this. But I guess this is basically been my lecture. I hope you learned a thing or two. And if you have some questions, feel free to ask them, of course.
That was quick. That was also very dense, though. So I bet there will be some questions as well. And I definitely have one from YouTube, and it's Owain Kimber who asks, hold on a sec, where did I? What do you feel about giving coverage to lesser known artists and scenes? Do you not have a responsibility to uncover new music / scenes / genres that are not necessarily big or obvious to your readers?
Okay, this is a tricky question, because I have the urge, and I feel we have the obligation as well to absolutely cover scenes that are lesser known, that to cover artists that are lesser known. You always, I don't know, you're in a dilemma as an electronic music writer, I guess, because as any outlet, we are of course dependent on clicks as well. So if there's a possibility to get interviews with really famous artists, there's basically few doubts we're going to do this. But I guess the best economy, or from an economic side, the best solution would be that the bigger ones give you the clicks, and you have then the chance to unveil and cover lesser known artists. You have some kind of free space then within you can act freely and act out your I don't know, your preferences and your scenes like that are most important to you. Of course, you should not only cover scenes that you like as an editor. You should try to balance it out equally, I guess. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know if any of the participants has any questions by now. If so, just let us know. Otherwise, I'm gonna fry you a little. I think from here we can easily go to the topic of nostalgia that you talked about, and you seem to be very critical of, and I know you are very critical of, as also young music journalist, as you've also mentioned, because obviously you do still in some kind of way cater to it. For example, if you talk about those Zeitgeschichten features where producers from back then tell their story, I posted in the chat an example of Marshall Jefferson speaking about how he made acid tracks. I think, I don't remember the full interview, but it was a little bit confusing because it sounded as if he was in the room with Future when they did it. But apart from that, it's the question is, how do you avoid falling into this trap of only churning out nostalgia oriented content that basically is just regurgitating what everybody kind of already knows, especially in the news business and the daily business?
Regurgitating, what a nice verb.
I hope I used it correctly.
I don't know, but well, like I'm totally aware of that. We have formats like Charts from the Past where we are regurgitating basically charts that are like 1 or 2 decades old, or that we of course do a lot on stuff that happened in the past. I don't know if it's so important to avoid the nostalgia trap. I don't even know if it's a trap. I guess if you focus on stuff that has not been told, you avoid this kind of trap to a certain extent. And as I also said during my lecture, I guess we're still waiting in electronic music for, I guess, since a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, for kind of musical revolution or whatsoever, for some really striking and new stuff. I guess people really, I don't know, producing electronic music always comes back to those certain patterns, to those certain techniques that have been already done in a really good way. I don't know, by Detroit techno, by all the stuff that happened throughout the 90s, and maybe if you focus the UK, by dubstep and what became of that. And but if you're asking me how to avoid this kind of nostalgia trap, I don't know if I can give a really really profound answer. I guess just focus on events that are happening right now, and not only skip through your calendar and see which artist's birthday it is today. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe connected to that, because I would contradict you a little in saying that nothing is really happening, or that there's not so much happening. I just have the feeling that you said before that you cover a mostly very Western sort of scene or community, and this then revolves around techno and house, which I would argue just musically and aesthetically maybe don't leave so much room for innovation. But in the past 10 years, definitely we have seen many other new genres, new musical movements emerge from outside of this like very sort of like close or like narrow sort of field. Like you had like I'm sorry, I can't do click loud so well, but we had this. There's of course like cumbia, reggaeton, all of whom have seen like some kind of re-emergence, or like there was a lot of I would say innovation in those fields. And so I would ask you like, yeah, how can you, or like, how does that play into your reporting? Like, because yes, of course, we all know that it's like very important to also be on the lookout for non-Western centric music. On the other hand, obviously, in my time as an online editor of Groove, I've noticed that features on stuff that happens outside of Europe or the US is usually not clicked so much by the audience. So what do you think, like what could be strategies in order to like change that a little?
Well, one strategy is happening right now. Like this whole workshop, I guess, is going to lay a focus on not so, I don't know, traditional westernized musical genres, and I don't want to go into the trap of like this sentence of spreading awareness, because this is like the most empty phrase I guess you can come up with. And as I told you at the start of my lecture, of course we are openly admitting that Groove Magazine has this westernized focus, which we are currently, well, which we are checking out, which we are critically looking at throughout the last months, or throughout, I don't know, the last years even. Strategies on how to shift the focus on how to convey the stuff to our readers is, or would probably be, to extensively just do it. I don't know. I can't come up with another strategy. You should, well, at least if you for yourself find the music interesting enough, this is another thing you have to ask yourself. But I absolutely do, which I'm sorry that I didn't mention this innovations that happen outside of our techno bubble, of course. But in my opinion, you have to cover this stuff relentlessly, or you should cover it relentlessly. Of course, this is hard for us to do now because there's like the two of us that are trying to save the magazine. And but if we had a bigger team and had the chance to cover it in a more extensive way, this is absolutely something that should be done, I guess.
Thank you. And Jamie wants to chime in and has a question. Hello to Beijing.
Hey.
Hi, thanks for the lecture earlier. I have a question related to the previous point that you made. Yeah, so in terms of covering emerging genres and scenes and new music, especially, yeah, thinking about an English audience and a mostly Western-centric readership, what do you think is the balance between introducing new music and new musicians just because it's interesting coming from a lesser known region, and actually engaging with it critically, even though it might be describing like scenes that are actually kind of small and beginning and maybe more fragile to like criticism or any kind of like not blind praise, I guess, or attention.
I guess the biggest mistake you could possibly make when covering I don't know, foreign scenes is to kind of convey some exoticism. So there's no use in covering scenes only because your readers will perceive them as exotic or as I don't know, something strange or whatsoever. So as I said before as well, it is crucial for you to be really into the topic, or to have some deeper interest for the topic you're reporting on. So there's no use, and nobody, it helps no one to just write on scenes because you feel obliged to do so. And once more, I have to say that we definitely are interested in those scenes. We just don't have the capacities for now to write on them. So I hope this answers your questions. If not, feel free to specify.
Yeah, no, very helpful to kind of clarify. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So Gustavo is next with two questions, two related, or maybe three questions, all related in some kind of way to the topic of clickbait.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Max. What about what happened with a good publication that doesn't get many clicks? Because too much of the editorial business right now is get clicks, because if you get clicks, you get more impressions of advertising. And so when a publication doesn't get many clicks, do you stop talk about the topic, or do you change the way that you are talking about the topic? And the second in that line is, can clickbaiting be used for good? Can you write a headline in so kind of tendentious, but use it for good? You get a clickbait, but when you go inside the publication, it's a whole thing. Can clickbaiting be using for good?
Okay, I'm going to answer the first part right now. Of course, our goal is to keep Groove Magazine existing, but if the only way achieving this goal is to fundamentally shift our values and our and the topics we write on, I guess this is nothing we want to do. I'd rather not keep Groove Magazine alive than seeing it become a, I don't know, clickbaity, attention-seeking, whatsoever outlet. So if we do not have enough clicks on certain topics, there's two conclusions you can draw out of there. One would be just stop reporting on it, or the other one would be report on it until your readers worship it. I don't know. But the important thing is for us to not change our style in terms of writing, I guess. So we don't want to write in a most spectacular way or whatsoever. We want to keep this factual style, especially when it comes to news. And yeah, but as for now, I can calm you down. The clicks are still coming in, so I don't think we have to change our style of writing. What would be great, or like, could you repeat the second part of your question again? Sorry.
Yeah, if clickbaiting can be used for good, if you can write a headline tendentious, but when you get the click, you take your readers into a whole good publication of good content.
Yes. Well, I have never, or I guess maybe I'm just not reading enough, but I've never seen an article that had a clickbait headline that actually was worth reading afterwards, or was really, really good afterwards. But of course, this could be an interesting way. But I don't think it's going to work for our readership as well. As I perceive our readership, they're interested in I don't know, well researched topics, and that, I don't know, they don't want to be tricked into reading some of our content. They only click what's interesting for them, I guess. But of course, I absolutely get your point. I think it is absolutely possible to use clickbaiting in a good way. I just don't know if it's feasible for Groove Magazine.
Yeah, Gustavo, I hope that answers your question. So Laura basically just asked me how it was when I was at Specs, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, Groove's sibling magazine. We all got fired in May. Hooray.
I'm currently sitting in Christopher's former office.
Exactly, filling my former chair. So I can talk a little bit about that because we had a no news approach. Basically, we wouldn't do any news pieces at all. But also after that, I would love to hear from the participants how the news business in their respective countries and regions works. What is deemed, for example, relevant there, and of course also if, for example, this hegemony of the Euro and North American centric sort of reporting is also a factor in your country or region. So anyone who wants to chime in on this, you'd be very welcome. So yeah, but back to the question for me, which was like, yeah, how was it with Specs? The concept of Specs was to publish one article every workday. On Fridays, we would do a record of the week sort of thing. And the other 4 were features, interviews, reportages, more in-depth sort of things. But with a lot of opinion pieces as well. So commentary was and has always been a sort of, well, USP, if you like, when it came to Specs. But yeah, when Dennis Pohl, the former editor of Specs, because Specs had the same destiny, so to speak, as Groove, both were discontinued at the very same time, and then also Specs was turned into an online publication. And Dennis had the idea of not doing news pieces, not trying to get into this cycle of just, running after the latest bit of news, and rather trying to do in-depth reporting. And well, we all got fired recently, as I just told you. So maybe there was a certain flaw in that model. However, it did yield some interesting results because in my experience as an online editor for Groove, which I did on a part-time job, and I was the only one manning that website, it was very, very hard for me to actually keep up with all the stuff that was happening. And it just drove me crazy. It really, it was really tough on me, like also mentally, to be in the situation where I try to like sort of like, okay, yeah, like this is happening, I need to do something on this, but I got 20 hours per week to do this. That was impossible. So when working at Specs, things were more relaxed, and we would say like, okay, this is a topic now, let's find someone to write something really in depth and nuanced about this within maybe the next 3 days. Which is something, an approach that I appreciated a lot, but I think which also had its flaws, because in the general attention economy that you've also mentioned, of things, basically, sometimes when we would publish a piece, everybody already had said and heard everything about it. And so we would just add to a pile of opinions that everybody was already tired of in some kind of way. Which brings me to a question for you, Max, actually, because you've mentioned earlier that, yeah, you can't be too late. How do you decide whether or not you're too late with a piece of news? Is it like if Resident Advisor, for example, has gone out with like a news piece on it first, does that mean that it's less important to you? Or can you still say, okay, well, nobody else in Germany and the German-speaking languages has yet reported on this? What's the criteria here?
The first factor would, of course, be that how important the news is, actually. So if it's, I don't know, if it's like just as a fictional example, like if Berghain closes for good, and by some or for some reason we don't learn, or we don't get this news for a couple of days, it would still be super important to publish a news piece on it. But if the news is like 3 or 4 days old and it's only about like the announcement of an album of some kind of artist, which would be a possible news, but not a necessary one, we refrain from doing it. It's pretty important to us. As I said before, our RA is an important source to us, but even RA are sometimes later when it comes to reporting on news than we are. And well, concerning German outlets, there's not so many, is there? So I guess it's we don't depend on when German outlets report on news, I guess, because of course we also go through newspapers, not only electronic music focused outlets. Yeah.
And then again, any of the participants are very much invited to offer their perspective on how things are being dealt with in their region. I would be super interested in hearing that. So just let us know. Otherwise, there is some questions from YouTube. And one of them picks up a little bit on the reporting on something outside of the usual circles. What are some ways that RuthMag look for news content outside of the traditional circuits to include perspective/artists that are usually left out by it? So I think to frame this a little bit more, you already spoke about PR agency pushing a lot of news when it comes to, for example, like new album releases that you get to know of like in advance, like a week or month or whatever, before they are actually out or before they are actually announced officially. So obviously that is very easy to plan with, but what do you do if, for example, whatever, there was an example that you sought out where Actress, the British producer, just dropped the link on some message board, and it turned out it was not a link to his own music, but it was picked up and reported on as if it was his own music. So how do you deal with, for example, like stuff that gets released overnight, for example, like
concerning news pieces now?
Concerning news pieces on, for example, like new releases, how do you try to like first off get this kind of information, and secondly, what makes it relevant? Like, for example, if Actress just like drops new album overnight, is that relevant? And yes, why or why not?
Well, I guess if you want to stick to the example of Actress, he's a really revered producer, and what he's doing musically is interesting for a lot of our readers, and well, this basically makes it relevant. If something's happening overnight, so to say, if Actress is announcing an album overnight and publishing it overnight, or as Daniel Avery did a couple of weeks ago, we are trying to include it in the review section, because normally when it comes to reviews, we're sending the reviews out to our freelancers in order to get them back 1 week before the month stops. And well, if there's some albums dropping out of nowhere, we have to cover them basically by ourselves. And yeah, considering or closely measuring if they are relevant or not. In the case of Actress, I'd absolutely say it is, because this is a producer that is kind of formative, I guess, for the UK scene that happened since the early 2010s. I would say, when it's still really sought after and is perceived in a artistical or an arts context as well, and what he's doing is most of the time something we enjoy. Yeah, if it doesn't come to AI-driven performances.
Okay, thank you. I have a few more questions, but Gustavo has another one as well, or two, actually.
Yeah, but first I will answer your question about what happened in my region. I'm from Guatemala, but now I'm living in Brazil. In Guatemala, doesn't exist a specialized press of music specialized press. There is too little cultural press, because you know that music is one of arts, and art is one element of culture, and culture is something more bigger. So now the publications that are made in the cultural sections or the artist sections of the printed press, or the printed publications, or the online publications, are most of them the mainstream, but the super mainstream, because I don't know, here in Latin America, we say something: when you have hungry, when you are hungry, when you want to eat, you don't have time to think in revolution, you know, you have to eat. You know, so the artistic thing, the musical thing, the electronic musical thing, it's very difficult to insert in the public conversation, because it's not the principal thing. So the mediums just use the cultural or artistic or music content just to fill spaces that don't use it to editorial opinions or that. So yeah, but more than the European thing, I think we know more obviously the gringo, the the North American thing. So yeah, but it will be changed. So I'm going to
Hold on a sec. A question for you. So, where, as a dance music enthusiast and reader, where do you get your news from mostly?
Well, I am formed in marketing, so I really love to investigate things. So by my own. It changed a little bit in South America, because in Argentina and Chile and Colombia, you have more infrastructure, you have more musical industry, more festivals. I mean, Queen came 4 times to Argentina. Queen came to Rock in Rio. I mean, from these days, change a lot here in the South, but in the Central America, it's so different. We know more than the North Americans than the South Americans. But I will go to my questions to Max. If you interview someone and her answer something that does not fit the editorial line, what do you do with that interview? You erase that, or you edit too much that answer, or what you do? And I don't know, the second question, I maybe should ask it to Alexis, but why not? What do you think music journalism has changed from the printed to the digital days, consider that you now know better your readers, because now you can go to the statistics section of your website and you see that you are reading from just Germany, or where are you reading, how old are they, etc., etc., etc.
Okay, I'm going to answer the second part first. It is true that well, the numbers that we can access to, or that we have access to now, really show us which contents work good and which content doesn't work at all. So I guess this is kind of a step forward, because the worst thing I can imagine is having a huge cover story with a print magazine that nobody's interested in. I don't know if this happened to former Groove print issues, but maybe, I don't know. But I guess it's really good for us to well, have our reach measured, to have our content accessible in a measurable way. So yeah, we can basically focus on what works best for our readers. Yes. And the first question was about if someone says something in an interview that should, or that would be a bit controversial.
Yeah, that something that doesn't fit with the editorial line.
Okay. Well, does not fit is like, I don't know what you exactly mean by does not fit. If some people, okay, could you specify, please?
Yeah, if you interview a DJ and the DJ is very macho, very machista, very mansplainer, I will say, or very racist, or very discrimination. I don't know. It is obviously, if someone says something openly racist, obviously you will not cover it, and maybe you will stop. But sometimes people say things cover it. I don't know if I am.
No, I totally got it by now. If you happen to interview someone which is, I don't know, a conspiracy theorist, or who is a racist, overtly racist, the thing with interviews is, and with features as well, our policy is, and I guess we have to do it by press rights, or by press rights as well. We always give the quotes of the artists that we include into the piece. We hand them out to check. So, as I said, electronic music is so professionalized. Almost every artist that has put out an EP on 2014 or something has one agent. I don't know. So they are then the ones that go through the features and say, okay, this quote is not adequate. You shouldn't publish it. But and as I said before, we also have the duty to protect artists from themselves, but you should not mistake this with protect racists from criticism. So if some people say something that is overtly racist, and they say it in an interview, and they are okay with us including it in a piece, I feel it as a duty and absolutely rightful to publish it. No matter who it is. So I think it's absolutely legitimate to include this.
Yeah, that's a very nuanced and detailed topic by itself, which is why also Laura, who actually has some experience with exactly that type of thing, and we can also talk about maybe if she then wants to talk about it. I don't know if she's currently available to talk about this or wants to. But there was a case like this. This happened in Groove magazine, where someone said something off the record, but in her presence as a journalist, and we decided to run the piece and include these statements, because we felt it was our duty to report on this. And then what came after was a very, very interesting dynamic of other publications picking up on that. And maybe we can talk about this some other time. I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to say, also add something, because before I leave the word to Aman, who also wanted to ask something. About this whole print versus now big data sort of thing, because like I said, I started the magazine while it was still a print magazine, but I was also the online editor, and I spent many a night hunched over Google Analytics to understand how our readers click and think, and like literally click. So yeah, I would say that print obviously has the advantage of you just having something in your hands, and like, of course, you can skip stuff, but if you're whatever, on the toilet, on the train, on a beach or whatever, and you just have it, you're more likely to just read all of it if you have the time, if you need to kill time, which made it a lot easier to expose people maybe to, you know, like stuff that doesn't work in a digital environment. And so, yeah, obviously, you could see, I've mentioned this before, that very great pieces about music that was happening outside the normal four to the floor European/North American sort of circuit was barely like acknowledged by a lot of readers. And of course, that's devastating in some kind of way, because we're also passionate about music, and we are also passionate about anything that just pushes the envelope, no matter from where it comes from. And does it does to a certain extent, although of course influence the ways in which you, for example, write headlines or teasers, because that's something that I've learned very early on, and I felt a little just slimy for doing it. But if you go in with like a controversial headline, or like weird sort of cover photo, especially could work. Those things really draw people in, and it's sad to just, yeah, you don't really feel, I don't know, as if your integrity after this is still very much intact. But sometimes it's the kind of stuff that you need to do in order to just navigate through this like weird field of attention economy. I usually try to also reflect on that in my work as a journalist. There was, like, for example, a piece in which I wrote about Berghain clickbait, and the headline for that piece was, "You will click on this article because Berghain is mentioned in it." Which was funny, because on Facebook then people were like commenting like, "No, I will not click on this because Berghain is mentioned," but they still reacted to it, thus kind of proving my point that, you know, like, you just need like an emotionally charged topic like Berghain, and everybody will jump on it. And I mean, what I tried was exactly what Gustavo was asking for, using clickbait as something that tries to reflect on clickbait. It doesn't work all the time, but I think it's sometimes worth trying it out. Sometimes we don't have another choice, to be very frank. So
I just wanted to add something to this whole advantages of print thing. I guess you can get the advantages of print magazines if your website has a proper architecture. But like, if you really have a website that is suggesting other topics in a clever way, I guess you can have something almost as good as the, I don't know, the advantages of print magazines.
Yeah, which again, I would like to reiterate that neither Max nor Alexis nor anyone else, including me, has anything to do with the way that the Groove website looks like and is, the UX design or lack of it. Anyhow, I wanted to hand it over to Aman, who has a question and also some other things to say. Hi, Aman.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, I thought I would chime in on the clickbait and click generation debate. I mean, not very important, but for example, what we in the publications that we are working with, we always have this debate about honoring the part of the discourse that the audience finds relevant and what we find relevant. And so it's always like trying to balance, because like sometimes we have to write about artists that we may not really care about, but we know that they're quite big and the audience will like to read about it. Obviously, when you go too down that road, somebody will come up and accuse you of cherry picking and Roche's letter to the music publications of, and at the same time. So, but, again, it's about striking that balance. And one way we sort of have been striking the balance is using social media as a platform. So like if we know that there's some content, some album released by an artist that not a lot of people will sort of want to go to a website to check out. We just sort of do a social media post about it because it takes less effort, it gets the attention to the artist. And so, whatever you left, you can use the publication bit for bigger artists. So once we get you clicks and all that. And of course we do premieres and exclusive listens and early listens, premiering something just to get some clicks. So that was my 2 bits on the click generation thing. But other than that, I wanted to sort of touch upon something that you actually spoke about a bit earlier, but you sort of spoke about it from an editor's point of view. But I wanted to approach it more from as a freelance writer or as a writer's point of view, which is, again, so, I guess this is sort of a crossover with the pitching discussion, but again, since you talked about finding relevant topics, if you're writing for an international platform, say Bandcamp or Ableton or Resident Advisor even, if I'm somebody from India or Mexico or where I was writing for Groove Magazine, which is where your audience is mostly Germany based. So, and if I'm identifying my topics for that, shouldn't it be like relevant? Shouldn't be some topic which is relevant both to India or Mexico, or, the local scene, and also to the global discourse of Germany? So how do you strike the balance between the local discourse and the global discourse?
Well, basically, I guess we're interested in both. The best would be, of course, to combine these 2 worlds, but in my opinion, themes topics should not only be relevant if they are relevant in Germany. So if you were to pitch us something from I don't know, India, from North America, well, North America fits the German dance music discourse, of course, but from South America or wherever on the world, I don't think we would not be interested in this. So, of course, it would be best, like Christopher mentioned, Comb before, which is a genre coming from Africa, but having well, I wouldn't say huge or lots of fans in Germany as well, but I guess a decent fan base. So this would be stuff that is important for us and interesting for our readers as well. But generally, I'd say that not one scene, or there is no scene you couldn't pitch us an article about. At least this scene should be relevant then in your home country or whatsoever, or in the country you're doing your research. But yes, so I don't think there's any office we would immediately turn down. Surely not.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, that's right.
No, you go first.
Yeah. Even though like a major part of your audience might not be, readily accepting of that topic, right? So that's like a bargain you're making.
yeah, because this is what we're actually trying to achieve. Well, this sounds a bit arrogant, maybe, but well, shift the interest of our audiences. I don't know why some people are still so eager to listen to the fifth album of, I don't know, some well-established Berlin techno producers in 1 year. I don't know. So this is what we're trying to achieve, because we as editors find it interesting as well, and I think we should take the freedom to publish stuff that we like as well. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. A bit related to that, and also connected to something that Aman just said, is how is it, because Groove obviously has a certain understanding or transports a certain understanding of what actually electronic dance music is, right? Mm-hmm. But that is also very, very limited to a sort of like mode of distinction, basically, because you're not talking about Martin Garrix, you're not talking about David Guetta, and all of that. So where's the glass ceiling if you go towards a more mainstream sort of field of music? How do you decide? Because yes, we all do like just features sometimes on stuff that we absolutely do not agree with, but we think it's important to be diverse in our reporting, and also, I don't know, give some V-neck, Ibiza, tech house bros some coverage, because like there's a demand for that, right? But how do you draw a line there? Like, for example, do you think it would be advisable to somehow look into, you know, more mainstream sort of movements?
Well, that's an interesting point, because I don't see a huge difference between Steve Aoki blasting cakes into the audience and Peggy Goo blasting t-shirts into the audience. So this is really interesting. I'd say that, of course, Steve Aoki or Martin Garrix, this is all dance music, but you would neither say that, I don't know, rock journalists would not say that AC/DC and whatnot, I don't know, System of a Down are in the same genre whatsoever. Where we draw the line, or where the glass ceiling is, I guess, is just our musical taste, and the musical taste that is kind of a red line that goes through Groove's history as a magazine. So we didn't start working here with plans to cover EDM artists all of a sudden. But of course, I wouldn't hesitate, or I would be interested in pieces reflecting the EDM scene as well, that are if something with the reach of the EDM scenes would come to life in, I don't know, India. This would be super interesting as well, as long as it's critical, as long as it's not, well, just celebrating without thinking about it, what's happening there.
Aman is just saying, maybe you want to just do it on camera?
I was just saying that most of the publications in India were talking about Goa trance as well. So it's treated the same way as you would treat Stevie Aoki and Martin Garrix. So I guess it's universal, that whole.
Yeah.
The thing is, there's certain DJs that got really popular when by doing Goan trance, but this is not the thing that's likely to happen, I guess. We treat psytrance and Gore in the same way as EDM when it comes to covering it, because we don't covering it at all. This is, but I guess for other reasons, because in my opinion, Gore music or psytrance music is as non-commercial or maybe even less commercial than techno music. But in my opinion, the whole scene, the whole mindset of Goan psytrance is, how do I put it without I don't know, it's just different. I don't know, it is more like this hippie approach that was never, in my opinion, close to anything related to techno. So we're not covering Goa or psytrance because it is super commercially successful or whatnot. But yeah, it's just, well, it is electronic music to some extent, but it's also completely different. And in my, well, if I'm allowed to bring in my taste here as well, it's just something I don't really enjoy listening to. But this doesn't matter, if we're honest. But yeah.
And maybe as a follow-up to that, do you think that if you do decide to run a piece on the Goa scene in India, or I think the whole thing like psytrance is also super big in Israel, for example, if you do decide to do that and suddenly you would find out, wow, okay, this is really blowing off and a lot of people are interested in that. Obviously you can also kind of figure out, okay, do they come from our regular target group, so to speak? How would you deal that? How would that influence your editorial strategy?
This is a really good question, actually.
Thank you.
I have the feeling that Goa is so underrepresented that a lot of people would love to see it in some established publications and some established outlets. Let's say publish a Goa piece or piece on psytrance, a really in-depth repertoire, a really in-depth about it. Feature of the whole year or something. Be a bit.
Okay.
I can hear you again.
Okay, perfect. I can hear you as well. I can also see you moving just very gradually. Yes, there was a hand. Hi.
This is the kind of internet connection we work with on a daily basis. I just have to remind you of this. So, yeah. Yes, if, like, given that piece would be the most successful in a long time of the whole year, we would, of course, have to deal with that, have to make our own strategies, how to, or maybe, like, we're back at this focus shifting thing that we usually don't want to do. We're not like those stubborn editors that, like, some stale guys that are only that what is proper techno and what is not proper techno, or what is proper electronic music or what is not proper electronic music. But it would be a really interesting development for us if Goan psytrance suddenly would be totally worshipped by our readership, and we would have to make up our minds then. But well, maybe we should just do like a test feature. I don't know. I don't know if our readers would love it, but could be, maybe.
Who knows? Maybe Aman is exactly the right person to do this. Great. To be honest, I think we've had a pretty long discussion. As I said, if one of the participants wants to step in to talk a little bit about how things go in their scene, I would be very much interested in that, on more of that. But maybe we can also talk about this next Friday, where we will be having a group discussion about regional music reporting in a globalized world. Otherwise, oh no, Gustavo again. Gustavo has one. You go ahead.
Sorry, Bill, but I have too many questions. So
that's good. That's good. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah.
How do you manage that dynamic between user experience design of the website and some cases of the app and your writing style. Which affects which? It affects you in the size of your text, for example, or who have the word?
So you're basically asking who is working the ads into our website and how we.
No. I guess the question is more about how does the general layout of the website, how does the design influence your writing, which is absolutely fascinating question.
Okay. So I guess Christopher and I basically told you that we are not quite happy with the architecture of our site. So it's quite hard for me to answer this question because, of course, we re-watch or we look at our articles after publishing them because they at least should not look like, should not like totally disarrayed. I don't know, but how to adjust our writing to the homepage. I guess maybe we could talk about this when it comes to the length of our features. You have to bear in mind that throughout the internet, the attention span of readers is mostly shorter than when having a print magazine or having a book in their hands. Maybe the average attention span or the average the average time a groove user stays on our site is a bit longer. But after all, we try to make our features lengthwise easily digestible, to make them interesting, to maybe have some subheadlines, to have big pictures in them, so that the whole scrolling doesn't get too boring. Yeah, I would love to talk more on this, but when we ever happen to have a redesign of the homepage, I guess I could tell you a lot on this. And yeah, but for now, that's all I can say, I guess.
Yeah, I can maybe add a few words as someone who has previously worked more in a print environment. Obviously, what Max has just said is true, that you just work a lot more with headlines. You work with teasers because you want people to come into the whole thing. Like you have to give them an incentive to even just go on the page, or if they're on the page, to like click a certain article. And you do that through pictures first and foremost. For example, I found out very, very quickly when I became an online editor that working with faces is a lot more, just works a lot better than any other kind of picture. That may be because people just like to click on other people. That may be because some algorithms in social media just would prefer to see human faces in the newsfeed because, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg wants his network to appear more human. Whatever. So those are things like design-wise that really are very, very different from the print ages, where people would just, flip over the page and there's your headline. Okay, maybe it doesn't like really draw you in, but maybe you start reading anyhow. And if you start reading anyhow, I think not so much has changed. The first few or the very first sentences are still the most important ones. However, obviously, in an online environment, people drop out way earlier. And there's been platforms who used a lot of deep learning, for example, and big data to understand what are the points where people drop out of the article, and try to adjust that. I remember, I think like 5, 6, 7 years ago or something, BuzzFeed became really advanced in this. They would apart from the whole like whatever, only 90s kids can understand this sort of shtick, what they also did was publish a lot of in-depth and long reads, stuff like that as well. But those were written in a certain way, where, for example, after the first third of the article, because they learned through deep reading that people would drop out there, they just put a cliffhanger there, just put something there that would incentivize people to just go on to find out. So basically a sort of like Stephen King approach to journalism, if you want to phrase it like that. And I think that is very interesting, also very dystopian, but I think it would definitely be possible. And I've mentioned before that, yes, of course, like big data influences us, or like at least like the numbers are important in some kind of way, because behind those numbers are, well, very hard economic facts, basically, for us. So yeah, like those are ways in which you can try to like work with stuff. Also, yeah, it helps, for example, to have great pictures, to have, yeah, well, maybe a graphic designer who's helping you to do like special layouts for like certain articles. I think Cracked magazine, for example, British magazine, is very good in working with just visual stuff that is like really big, and they commission photographers, something that Groove, for example, doesn't have a budget for. So Groove would have to work with press photos, which from artist to artist look very, very different, or they're all black and white and depressing. But still,
we sometimes shoot them by ourselves.
Sorry?
We sometimes even shoot them by ourselves.
Yeah, which is more like a sort of snapshot approach.
Yeah.
But I think we can talk about this a little, especially since, and I posted the link in the chat both here in Zoom and on YouTube, that your comment on this gummy boat demonstration that was happening parallel to the Black Lives Matter protest that was going on a few hundred meters away, that also worked with a certain visual, which was like a hand drawing, and which was very quirky and very, yeah, almost like had this like little bit of like a trashy sort of character.
Yeah.
And no offense to the artist, of course. But that was also like a sort of like visual clickbaiting, of course, in combination with the headline. So I would say that these things absolutely happen as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is what I want to stress out. Like clickbaiting is like, there's this one type of text where clickbaiting is rather okay. I guess this is obviously commentary, because commentaries tend to be the most controversial stuff, tend to be the most discussed type of text. And I guess if you want to be vocal, if you want to make your opinion accessible for a huge crowd, if you want to give your opinion to a huge crowd, you should try to maybe be a bit, maybe not be that factual, but to be a bit more, well, yeah, quirky, as you said, a bit more aggressive, maybe even,
or just controversial or polemic.
And what I wanted to add, keeping users on the page, there's as well another trick to do that, or another good way to do that, or to keep contact to your users. That would be a weekly newsletter that we also have, which is taking a lot of effort, but is still reliable, or more reliable than social media, because it can always happen that you post something on Facebook and the algorithm just fucks it up. And if you establish a good connection to your readership and do good advertising for your newsletter, I guess it's the easiest way probably to keep in touch with your readership, especially during those testing times for electronic music outlets, or music outlets, basically.
So Laura from her Noisy Cafe comments, I wouldn't call this clickbaiting in reference to working with controversial headlines or whatever. This is just teasing / catching the reader's attention. Clickbait for her is followed by a false promise, leading you to a dead end / not keeping what it promised, which a comment definitely does, which, yeah. But I think that's exactly the sort of dynamic that Gustavo was talking before, that we've already discussed in some kind of way, that, yeah, like you go in a little yeah, polemic or hard in order to catch people's attention. And obviously you're fishing for something. Obviously you try to sort of get ahead of the whole like attention economy that you have to deal with, especially in social media. There's also a lot of magazines who would work with different teasers and headlines in different environments on social media. For example, I don't know, like basically the biggest magazines in Germany, they sometimes have 5 or 4 different headlines for one and the same article, and they just adjust it accordingly to which platform they posted to, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever on their own homepage. So these are different because they try to sort of anticipate, okay, how will this type of wording work in a different environment? Like, you know, like Twitter, for example, okay, not a lot of people actually read stuff, but they like to comment on it, they like to retweet it and whatever, if the headline just fits. On Facebook, maybe you just go in with a sort of like thesis, like a strong sort of like opinion that is like being expressed in the headline, because you know that some Facebook trolls will just crawl into the comment section and have epic flame wars there or something, which is also something that, well, you kind of want to incentivize, sadly, or like at least you benefit from it happening. So yeah, that's something that I would add. Then there's another question from Fadi. What do you see as the pros and cons of video series like RA's Real Scenes versus similar written pieces touching on the same topics and scenes? That's an interesting one.
Absolutely. I have to first say that I really enjoy the RA pieces, the RA video pieces, not only like Real Scenes, but what's the other one, Between the Beats, where they follow several artists, or like the video piece on that they did to kind of uncover how and why Drexciya took Detroit Electra underwater. This is stuff I really enjoy. The pros and cons would be, I guess, the same that always come up when comparing videos and written pieces. The biggest advantage of videos, in my opinion, is that you have some kind of authentic experience. Not that it would be authentic, but you see how it looks there. You see how everything is going. You see how what's taking place there. You see the people. You see them speaking. You have their voices and stuff. But written pieces, on the other hand, have this big the big advantage that you as a writer have the space there to include your own thoughts in a way bigger extent than a video going, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes could. So I guess this would be the main difference. And the second question would be, if I feel if this increase in video content made things harder for publications. We as well would love to do video content one day, and we did already as Groove Magazine, but I wasn't employed there back then. But as Christopher pointed out, we don't even have a budget for having proper photos took or proper press photography took. Bye-bye, you guys. And so I think the demand for video probably made it a bit harder for purely written publications, but I don't think that the readership of Groove, for example, shifted to, or now only looks RA's Real Scenes features or whatsoever. I think those two sections are pretty different until today.
Mm-hmm. And connected to that, someone on YouTube is asking, what about video-based music reviews? Sunil Sharp does an excellent piece called Quarterly Create, which I'm surprised the format has expanded more. What do people think? I guess this is about video reviews. Like what you would think about that. I mean, I know that there's, for example, the Needle Drop, who is this like obnoxious guy who does videos in talking about 4chan related music content in funny voices, and that's really popular. But like, there's no such a thing that I can think of in electronic music. I think we considered doing something like that back when I was an editor at Groove. But what would you think about it?
Yeah, I actually saw some video review of electronic music a couple of days ago, but it was not the Sunil Sharp one, which I don't know. But I forgot the name of the format and basically everything, because I don't. This is not a kind of this is not the kind of content I really like, I guess. It is a big difference, of course, if established artists do the reviews like Sunil Sharp. Then I guess it's pretty interesting to me. But there's so many YouTube critics that pick out random, I don't know, random vinyls and review on it, or make reviews. I just don't see the point in it. This is not because I want everyone to read the Groove review section. But for me as a private person, I like when I can read the reviews and listen to the music and not being told by an actual person what they like about the record or not, like in real time, in video time. It has the advantage, of course, that you can always play the music whilst reviewing it and maybe give your viewers a better accessibility. But as a person and as an editor, I don't think that would be the best format for Groove Magazine. It would be a good format maybe to do like a round table and then have a video review. But the table at the moment would not be quite round because there's only Alexis and me. So if there were 4 or 5 people, and I'm thinking of the editorial team that existed back in the spring, because we have quite different tastes all along. So this would have made for an interesting format for sure.
Yeah. So Stephanie just says that in Mexico City that video is on the rise, or at least people don't like to read a lot sometimes, and that they want immediate attention. Information. Maybe they also want attention. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
and also reggaeton has all the headlines right now.
Okay. So reggaeton is big in Mexico's music press right now.
Yeah.
Okay, and would
yeah, obviously we talk about Martin Garrix and Tiesto, but I think reggaeton and rock music and big DJs are the headlines. We don't have this kind of Twitter articles that you show us, just a kind of news with some quote from the artist or something like that, with just interviews or news, nothing in the middle. And now video has worked because I don't know why people don't like to read too much or biggest articles, like just 1, 2, or 3 paragraphs and it's all. And I don't know what happened, because we have a lot of music magazines, but most of our news is from another part of the world. We don't have a biggest local scene or something. Always talk about what happens in USA or sometimes in Europe, but don't go away from sometimes techno or EBM. It's a kind of problem because only blogs or little blogs talk about experimental music or another scenes.
And if you say that video has been the format in recent times that was the most prominent, what kind of video features are those? Like, are those like Q&A interviews or real features like we've just discussed in terms of RA, which are like more like small documentaries? What kind of formats are being used there?
The kind of news but with a video, with photographs, sometimes Q&A interviews, but a lot with news, but in a video.
And is that a format that interests you also as a journalist, or do you prefer writing about electronic music? And what do you think are the advantages of writing about it as opposed to doing videos?
I prefer writing, obviously, and also because I don't know anything about video production, so I like the writing for that. And I think it's something you can put your opinion or your ideas also in the writing process and other reference. So I prefer to writing.
Why do you think people don't like to read a lot sometimes, as you put it?
I don't know, maybe it's a Mexican thing or something.
No, I wouldn't say so. We
I
experience
think people a lot say, oh, too much text, see read this. Yeah.
Maybe, but I guess it has a lot to do with attention economy, information economy. We witnessed it a lot at Groove Magazine as well. If we publish a piece on Facebook, for example, there's big chances people will comment on it without reading it, and comment stuff on it that would not have necessarily been commented if the people had read the whole piece. I think, well, this is just something that happens more and more in modern day society.
Another question, I think, connected to that, that comes from YouTube is because obviously you've mentioned a newsletter which is trying to break a little bit with the well, hegemony or like, a dominance of social media in the distribution of news. And someone's asking, sorry, are you planning an Android or iOS app for Groove? Wouldn't that attract more readers maybe in this day and age?
That's a quite good question. We would be interested in having an app, but I as well have to say that we are a pretty small publication, and Christopher, who has worked for Specs magazine before, which are our direct neighbors, had an app which was
not good.
Which was not good, and this actually, I guess, erodes or is bad, like, for the reputation of the whole magazine. So of course, I would love to have a good and well thought and well carried out app, but as long as this is not the case, I'd rather refrain from having one, or prefer not to have one. Of course, I think apps are something that could be quite important, especially if you have a lot of readers that are accessing Groove.de through their mobile devices, and so they don't have to log in every time. They don't have to go to open their browsers and have to access the homepage every time they're on a train ride or whatsoever. So yes, I think apps are quite important, but they have to be constructed in a fitting manner.
Yeah, and Laura is commenting via the chat that she feels like the reading screen time is a little bit used up already every day by looking at your phone, working on desktop devices, etc., which is why people turn to audio formats. If you think about the rise of voice controlled devices like Alexa, I would add like just podcasts in general. Because that's super huge. Spotify, Deezer, Apple, all those platforms try to push really hard for platform, also because that's a very convenient way of not paying music producers, by the way. And that's become a global trend, obviously. And we've seen that also in the music world, obviously, that a lot of Podcasts have popped up, a lot of them financed by multinational corporations as well, who may not have so much to do with music, but it just makes for great marketing. And so yeah, that's also, I think, something, of course you have something like the Resident Advisor Exchange and some other formats which are more purely journalistic in that sense, but also that's been on the rise, I would say. Yeah, I think it's 3 p.m. CEST here, and which means that our session for today, I guess, is coming to a close, except, of course, if anyone still has some questions or any comments, any perspectives to offer. Speak now or forever be silent until tomorrow, same day as usual. Okay, no, that was it. Thank you very much, Max. Thank you everyone who participated. Thank you everyone who was listening. Tomorrow we will reconvene to see Christoph Benkeser, a long time writer for Groove and also for Specs, someone who has pitched me a lot of times his articles, and he will be talking about how to pitch a magazine and how to get your story published. So I'm looking forward to hearing all that as someone whom he convinced several times to actually publish his story. And yeah, so far, yeah, so good, I think. Yeah, thank you very much. See you tomorrow and bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening.